apartheid translates as separateness. Apartheid is a system of institutional segregation that existed in South Africa and Southwest Africa from 1948 to the early 1990s. Apartheid entails segregation of public facilities and social events, as well as dictating housing and employment opportunities by race. Apartheid sparked significant international and domestic opposition against South Africa. It was the target of frequent condemnation in the United Nations and brought extensive international sanctions, including arms embargoes and economic sanctions on South Africa. Serious political violence was a prominent feature from 1985 to 1989, as black townships became the focus of anti-apartheid organizations and the South African government. Apartheid in South Africa was dismantled in 1991. Does apartheid exist today? You may ask, where does it exist? Listen up, friends. Listen up. Breaking news. The United States continues to support apartheid. Israel occupies Palestine. This is undeniable. The Israelis acknowledge the occupation. The world knows about the occupation but continues to allow the apartheid against the Palestinian people to continue in Israel by the Israeli government with the support of the Israeli people. Israel enforces its policy of apartheid through the guns, tanks, and missiles of its military. The Irish, with their own history of oppression by the British Empire, are speaking out against this apartheid system enforced by Israel on the Palestinian people for over 70 years in occupied Palestine. Let us listen to what the Irish are saying.
Minister, myself and Deputy John Brady requested this debate at the Business Committee on Amnesty International's utterly damning report that Israel is a state that is operating a system of apartheid, and in doing so are committing crimes against humanity, and call for sanctions to ensure that that system, that inhumane and inhuman system, is dismantled.
What we have seen every single day since October 7th is a breach of international law by the Israelis. And of course, virtually every single day prior to October 7th, the Israeli government have breached international law. They have occupied Palestinian land in contravention of international law. They have blockaded Palestinian territory in contravention of international law. They have built and enlarged settlements in contravention of international law, enforced an apartheid system that strips Palestinians of the most basic civic and human rights, not to mention natural dignity. And they have also targeted and killed and injured civilians on a mass scale for decades. And the response of the Western world at this time is what? Israel has a right to defend itself. Well, what exactly does that mean? Because the way that that's been interpreted, the way Israel takes that to mean, is that they can cut off food, that they can cut off the power, that they can cut off water. They can enforce the displacement of over 1 million citizens in what has been described by NGOs and United Nations reps on the ground as an open-air prison.
I voted against this motion after a week of horror in Gaza and the EU diving in head first, draping our parliament in the Israeli flag, aiding and abetting in war crimes, including the bombing of a hospital, and still we find it impossible to say that Palestinian lives matter. We're still privileging one category of victims over another. We talk about the humanitarian situation in Gaza, but why is there a humanitarian crisis? Is it a national disaster? Who cut off the water, fuel and electricity? Are we not sure? Who is bombing Palestinian civilians? Do we not know? Do you think we could mention it? There is a crime unfolding in Gaza now, such as we have not seen since the 1940s, and we are in it up to our necks. We're watching Israel murder Palestinian civilians and preparing to drive millions of them into the Sinai Desert to annex and colonise their land. It's another Nakba. It's a crime against humanity. It's not a humanitarian crisis. The EU will never live down this shame. Long live Palestine. Long live Gaza.
Under international law, what is happening in the occupied territories is a war crime. This Dáil has passed that motion. Yet we do commerce with people involved in war crimes. How can our government take a moral stand in the world when they continue to allow commerce to be done with people involved in war crimes, when they can't even stop investing in the businesses involved in war crimes. And they can't even recognise the state of Palestine. Be very, very clear about this. The Irish people will always stand against oppression and apartheid. The Irish people stood against the South African regime, and the Irish people stand against modern-day apartheid being inflicted by the Israeli state today. So if the government refused to listen to them, the next government will do what is right. But it should be happening tonight. It shouldn't have to wait to the next election to do what's right by our people.
When the US killed over 1 million civilians in Iraq, was that terrorism? When Israel terrorizes the Palestinian people every day, is that terrorism? When France and the UK and others armed the Saudi UAE to commit genocide in Yemen, where the UN said that over 400,000 are dead and 16 million are starving because of a genocide being carried out with the support of the US, the UK, France and several European states, is that terrorism? When he's going to wake up and start living in the real world?
Here in the United States, both Republican and Democratic parties and our government led by President Joe Biden continue to support Israeli apartheid by sending billions of taxpayers' dollars to Israel and by making statements supporting Israel's military actions in Gaza, which are clearly collective punishment of the Palestinian people for their resistance of the Israeli occupation of Palestine. Where are the American people on this issue? Do the American people support Israeli apartheid? It is in question that each American must answer. Malcolm X spoke about this. Let us listen to what Malcolm X had to say about the Palestinian people.
The Palestinian struggle is not just a cry for justice. It's a blistering battle for the most fundamental human rights that every living soul on this planet should inherit by birthright. It's an unyielding resistance against the oppressive, suffocating grip of occupation and the callous denial of the most basic human dignity. Just as the civil rights movement in the United States fought against the chains of racial discrimination, so too do the Palestinian people strive to shatter the chains of occupation and tyranny. Never forget, my friends, that the Palestinians, much like African Americans in the United States, have been subjected to a heart-wrenching history of suffering and torment. The birth of Israel in 1948 brought forth the mass expulsion and dispossession of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from their ancestral homes and land. This is a historic injustice that continues to haunt the lives of Palestinians to this very day. The situation in Palestine serves as a brutal reminder of the consequences of colonialism and the ruthless dispossession of indigenous people. It is an agonizing reminder that the fight for justice knows no borders, and we must stand united in solidarity with all oppressed peoples, whether they reside in the United States, South Africa, or anywhere around the world. Let's be unequivocally clear. Advocating for the rights of the Palestinian people is not synonymous with denying the rights and security of the Jewish people. The fight for justice in Palestine is not an assault on any particular group, but an unwavering stand against the policies of a Zionist state that has for far too long stripped Palestinians of their rights. We must remember that numerous Jewish voices also resound in the calls for justice and peace in Palestine, and their voices must not be silenced. In our relentless pursuit of justice for the Palestinian people, we must also acknowledge that it is in the best interest of the entire world to seek a just and enduring solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It is a pursuit in the name of peace, stability, and the dignity of all mankind. But let me underscore this. The battle for justice in Palestine is not merely a political struggle, it's an elemental moral battle. It's the fight for the most basic human rights of a people who have suffered these injustices for far too long. It's the fight for the right to exist in peace and security, free from the ceaseless specter of violence and dispossession. If you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. I implore every person of conscience, regardless of their origins or beliefs, to stand steadfast with the Palestinian people in their unwavering quest for justice by any means necessary. Let us unite in building a world where every soul can live in freedom and dignity, where the rights of every individual are not just respected, but celebrated. The struggle for justice in Palestine is a universal fight, a resonating echo of the battles waged by oppressed people across the globe. It's a battle we must champion, a torch we must carry, and a legacy we must honor. Thank you, and free Palestine.
When will the United States end its support for the Israeli apartheid system? When are American politicians, companies, universities, and citizens be held accountable for supporting an immoral and illegal apartheid system that exists in Israel today? When? I ask when? When America when? This is Erica Ocampo-Cortez for News Today History Tomorrow. Political commentary unfiltered? When America? When will America disavow apartheid in Israel? When? When?